Hypixel Skyblock has been out for over 5 years. That means we've seen lots of different weapons rise and fall relative to other weapons. Hypixel Skyblock is of course a game mode on a server on Minecraft, Minecraft being the ultimate game. And the ultimate form of attack or combat in Minecraft is simply left clicking and, well, hitting things. Today we investigate and take a look what is now the most powerful melee weapon on the game. If you've not been keeping up to date with Skyblock for maybe the past month or so, then you might not think that the Midas sword is actually now the best melee weapon. But I'm here to tell you that you'd be wrong. Well, for the most part, allow me to explain. This is the original Midas sword. It's got relatively decent stats. It was the best melee weapon in the game for a pretty long period of time back in the day. Now the main thing that determines how good a Midas sword is how much was paid for it at the Dark Auction. Now every Midas sword has the greed ability. The strength and damage bonus of this item is dependent on the price paid for it at the Dark Auction. The maximum bonus of this item is 120 if the bid was 50 million coins or higher. This means that if the price paid was 50 million coins on this Midas sword, it would get a bonus 120 strength and 120 base damage. And that's what we see right here. We have a Midas sword that somebody paid 96 million for, and you can see the bonus 120 strength and damage that it's getting, meaning that at base, without anything else on it, it's completely clean. It has 290 base damage and 220 strength, which nowadays is probably comparable to something like a Shadow Fury. But as of now, because of a new update, the Midas sword is way more powerful. You can pay a lot more coins that will affect your price buff, meaning that this weapon is much better. As we can see on this here Midas staff, it is the exact same perk. However, instead of 50 million coins being the maximum bid and 120 damage and strength, it's 250 million. As we can see, this Midas sword has a price paid of 253 million coins, meaning that it gives us a bonus 220 base strength and 225 damage. I meant to say 225. Now this Midas sword is recommed, it's gilded, it's fragged, it's got fuming potato books on it, it has gemstone slots unlocked, it has... the enchantments aren't anything special at all, but it means that its base stats are plus 554 damage, plus 459 strength, plus 70 crit damage and ability damage from the gilded reforge, which is honestly pretty crazy. Now the previous best melee weapon on the game would definitely have been the Dark Claymore, and this is a clean one. We'll try to get one that's maybe more comparable. For instance, this one here. This has got withered on it because, well, you can't put gilded on a Dark Claymore. It's got fuming potato books. It does have an Art of War, which ours doesn't have, and it has the withered power, the reforged stone, should I say. And this weapon has 580 base damage, which is, I think, slightly better than our Midas sword. Yeah, so slightly better. It has 365 strength, which is, I believe, worse. Yeah, pretty substantially worse. And it's going to give us, well, more crit damage than the Midas sword. But overall, if we're just looking at base damaging figures, they are very, very, very similar. But oh wait, the Dark Claymore is also going to give us a bonus 2 swing range, which is pretty massive. Maybe not outside of dungeons, but in dungeons. That's enough talking. I'm going to test this weapon out, and then we'll maybe talk more about how much we've paid for the weapon and if it's really worth it later. But before we do, if you are planning on purchasing anything from the Hypixel store, make sure to use code NITROS. It gets yourself 5% off. You should subscribe to the channel. If you watch the videos and you haven't subscribed, please make sure to do so. You should join the Discord server. It's linked in the description of this video. We offer slays and dungeon carries, so if you need carries or want to carry and make some coins, make sure to join. So here we are. The armor set we're going to be using is this 3/4 Crimson with Terror boots. I do have Crimson boots, but they're just not great. We're going to be using a Golden Dragon pet. We also have the Hurtful Power Stone on, meaning that if we take a look at our stats holding the Midas sword, we have 1,480 strength and 1,488 crit damage. So let's go and see what this weapon can do. Of course, we have to remember it does have Soul Eater on it, so that damage is going to scale. One thing I will say is with the G-Drag, I don't have any money in the bank at all. So these figures are not going to be as high as they could be, but we're going to deal around about 860, 870k damage. We can briefly test the weapon out in, well, the Crimson Isles and maybe even the end and see what it can do. Once again, the actual damaging figures aren't really... They don't really make too much difference because regardless of what damage I do, it's going to be different for everyone. I mean, sure, we can pretty easily take out these mobs that have 1 million HP. We're going to be dealing a decent amount of damage for the hit at 1.3 million, and then I mean that's more than enough damage. And our swipe is going to be hitting for quite a lot too. Our swipe's hitting for 2.8. Our hit's hitting for 1.3. We're dealing about 4 million damage per hit, give or take. It could be way higher, probably even maybe 1 million higher, including our swipe if we had a billion G-Drive bank. And yeah, it's a good weapon. I don't really have anything bad to say about it. I mean, we're dealing a ton of damage and we don't really have an optimum setup, and you know, we could do more damage to enemy if we really wanted to with other weapons. So where exactly does this leave us? Well, we paid just shy of 590 million coins for this sword, which is extortionate to say the least. Now, this wasn't expensive because of what it's got on it. This was simply the cheapest Midas sword that actually even had the ability to benefit from the buff of 250 million coins paid. So, something I want to bring attention to is this Midas sword right here. Right, this is plain. This is pretty much plain. It's got one for all on it, but other than that, we've got some hot potato books. It's recommed, but none of this really matters. This weapon with 250 million coins was paid for it, so we're benefiting from our full potential damage and stats, meaning that at base, this Midas sword is giving us 415 damage and 345 strength. And if we pan over to the Dark Claymore, this is giving us more base damage. It's giving us pretty substantially less base strength, and it's going to give us also a bit of crit damage. Not to mention the 2 swing range, and both weapons have 2 gemstone slots. Neither of them have a right click ability. So these 2 weapons are really quite comparable. Realistically, you're probably going to maybe deal a little bit more damage with the Midas sword, just because of how much more strength it gives you. But this Dark Claymore is 155 million coins, and at the moment, this weapon is the best part of 600 mil. Now, of course, you can get more out of a Midas sword than you probably can out of a Dark Claymore, considering you can put the Gilded Reforge on the Midas sword that you can't put on anything else, and of course that's a really strong Reforge. But the 2 weapons are very comparable, and realistically, they're both the same. And what I mean by they're both the same is they're both melee weapons. They don't have any special abilities, they're just going to deal slightly different amounts of damage. I would say that the Dark Claymore may even have the edge because it's got that +2 swing range, and I know Berserk isn't a very sought after class in dungeons because of how strong every other class is in comparison to Berserk, but if you're going to play Berserk, your Claymore's still going to be best bet because, well, it's got an extra +2 swing range, meaning that you don't have to go near mobs. You're a Berserk, but you're basically ranged. Now sure, the Midas sword will still be good in dungeons. I don't really see the point in testing it because it's just a melee weapon. And realistically, if you can play Berserk, then a couple % either way of damage is not going to really make a big difference. Whereas +2 swing range might make a difference. So once again, I don't think the problem is really the weapon. This weapon is going to be a really strong weapon. It can definitely compete with the Dark Claymore for damage. It may even slightly outdamage it once you've put all of your upgrades on it. But it is just a melee weapon, and melee weapons are notoriously underpowered in Skyblock because there's so many other better options. But ultimately, at the moment, you've got to look at this weapon and think, well, this is going to be 600 mil, realistically, and I can buy a Dark Claymore for 155 mil. If you get a decently upgraded one, maybe looking at 200, maybe 250. So what, you're looking at maybe a third of the price, maybe 2/5 of the price if you get a slightly beefier one. If you get a really upgraded one, then you may even pay more than this Midas sword. But at that point, it's not really a comparison. It just doesn't seem worth it. This weapon has got to drop in price. It has to drop in price. And to be honest, I don't know if it'll really ever drop in price enough to compete with the Dark Claymore because, well, if you're paying 250 million at auction for it, who wants to then pay 250 mil at auction and sell it for less? It makes no sense. And personally, I think for it to be worth the money, it needs to be buffed. But just buffing the weapon and damage alone just doesn't seem enough. I feel like it needs something else. You know, what would be really cool? It won't happen. But what if they just merged the Midas staff and the Midas sword to create some sort of hybrid weapon where you could use it for melee and mage? I don't know. Okay, so I decided to ask people on my Discord server what they thought of the 250mm Midas sword, and I guess these are the thoughts. Okay, the first thought was not good. That's not true. It's good. Best weapon for LCM. Quite a few people did say that it is the new best weapon for LCM, but majority of people only observe a couple of percentage different between the Claymore and the Midas sword. Which, I mean, you can make your mind up. Does that justify an extra 400 mil? 500 mil? I don't know. Not a good weapon, waste of money, get a Claymore. It is a good weapon, because it just is slightly better than a Claymore. Waste of money is probably true. Get a Claymore, yeah, I mean, I can't really argue with the end of that. But it is a good weapon. As far as melee weapons go, it is a good weapon. If you don't have a Claymore, get it. But if you already have a Claymore, it's not worth. I don't think it's worth regardless, if I'm being completely honest, in any situation. Unless you just have an unlimited amount of money and you really don't care, then it just doesn't justify a couple of percent difference as opposed to the Claymore, which is so much cheaper. It's like a third of the price. Giant sword, but better. I guess you could say the exact same for a Dark Claymore. And I guess we can say the exact same for this situation with a Midas sword. Agreed. It is a giant sword, but better, but so is a Claymore. But it's barely really more expensive. Better than Dark Claymore with G-Drag. Kind 5 Midas sword with Sheep is better in my opinion. I mean, sure, a Kind 5 Midas sword is going to be amazing. Putting Chimera 5 on anything is going to give it quite the helping hand. And of course, yeah, with G-Drag too, because Midas sword is a golden weapon. Not worth it. Claymore a little worse, but much cheaper. And I wouldn't be surprised if they change Midas sword again. I think that sums it up. Whether they change the Midas sword again or not, I really don't know. I personally think they should, because they need to, if it's to justify the price that it is at the moment, it needs to either deal a ridiculous amount more damage than the Claymore, which they won't make it so it does, or they need to give it another ability that makes it worth it. Not worth it. Claymore a little worse, but cheaper. Pretty much sums it up for me. Whether that's melee or what people have observed in LCM. And at the moment, I just think it's novelty. The fact that people can use a Midas sword and it actually be really good is just a little bit strange. But let me know your thoughts on this weapon in the comments. If you did enjoy today's video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one.